about way cash crisis works.
Talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the one factor thing called monetary awareness. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RT News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, we're going to be talking about recent statements made during the State of the Union address for the EU president there, where he voiced his opinion on the idea of the euro being utilized in trade instead of the dollar. And so once again, it's very interesting to hear another world leader voicing their opinion openly on the idea of it's time to begin de-dollarizing their economy by basically using their own currency instead of using the Federal Reserve note. So this is just one more nail in the dollar coffin, which will eventually lead to a very unpleasant end for the Federal Reserve note. But before I dive into today's article, as always, RTD, want to encourage you to click the subscribe button along with the notification tab to be informed of future updates as well as live streams. Also join me on Twitter, where I share posts throughout the day on various subject matters dealing with our monetary system as well as whatever's happening in the news that I can't get to via video. Make sure you click the button down below to be notified when things are posted. So as I mentioned, just have one article here, and if you're interested in finding out more details, feel free to scroll down below and take a look at it for yourself. Just want to skim through on the surface and then at the very end share with you my thoughts. So the article here is from Bloomberg Opinion. It says the euro has the power to challenge the dollar. It says growing U.S. unilateralism is an opportunity to end the greenback's dominance. So here's a picture here of Jean-Claude Juncker on Wednesday giving his last State of the Union address for the EU area, and some of the main topics he touched on was border security and how he most recently sent 10,000 Coast Guard members down to the borders to fight off the immigration crisis that's taking place right now with those countries there. And also one of the things that he expressed during his speech was the idea of removing all borders in the EU area, period, to have basically a unified Europe, which is what the goal behind this whole EU situation was initially. And so he said he's still committed to doing that. But the most important part of his speech was the idea that the European Union shouldn't depend upon a dollar for trade in their borders, nevertheless outside their borders. So he hinted at the idea of beginning utilizing the euro for trade amongst other nations. So give you an idea what's going on here, it says European Commission President isn't a nationalist, a populist, but he devoted his State of the European Union address on Wednesday to the defense of, quote, European sovereignty. So this means, among other things, using the euro to challenge the US dollar's global dominance, particularly in the area of growing American unilateralism. Quote is saying, the euro must become the face and the instrument of a new, more sovereign Europe, says Juncker. It's absurd that we pay 80% of its energy import, worth 300 billion euro a year in US dollar, when only roughly 2% of our energy imports come from the United States. So basically they import 2% of their energy from the United States of America, but 300 billion worth of euros being used, as they said here, 80% of the energy import bill altogether. It says Juncker complaints about the dollar-denominated contracts are justified. And so it says, for example, the EU is the biggest importer of crude oil. Then it gives some graphs right here as far as other nations that are heavy importers of oil. And then there's another graph here that says, yeah, according to Eurostat, a vast majority of these imports is invoiced in US dollars. It says, so what's Europe currency again? So it gives you a basic idea of what the invoice structure looks like for the variety of currencies being used, of which the dollar being the leading one. It says all goods imported, as of now, 55.4% of invoice currency is the dollar. They manufacture goods, imports of petroleum. And so scroll down a little bit more. It says, moreover, half of Europe's exports are sold in dollars rather than euros. It says most of Airbus's revenue is dollar denominated while its costs are incurred mainly in euros, a situation that airplane makers describe as a risk to financial accounts. So this makes little sense given that the euro is the world's second biggest reserve currency, and unlike the dollar, its share of global foreign exchange holdings is growing. I guess to hint at the fact that if more people use the euro, as well as it's going to mention down below about the yuan denominated futures there, so it's good to say that the total market share of usage of the Federal Reserve note inch by inch is decreasing as more leaders come out speaking against using the dollar in trade instead of their own currencies. Says China tried to challenge the dollar's dominance in oil trade. Earlier this year, it launched yuan-denominated oil futures contracts on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange, but they are relatively thinly traded and more volatile than the dollar contracts. Says Europe, as a bigger oil buyer than China and the issuer of far more powerful currency than the yuan, will probably stand a better chance of establishing an alternative. So I highlighted the word alternative to the US-based future markets. So basically they're saying here, because the euro is the second biggest currency, it poses as a great alternative to the dollar. So why have they not been using it? It says about 28% of EU oil imports come from Russia, which is eager to undermine the dollar's dominance. So here we have Russia is looking to do more bilateral trades using the ruble. So it's just a matter of time before they do. Scroll down some more, then it gives you a better idea of what it looks like. It says catching up too slowly. It says shares of the top currencies in the international monetary system. So when it comes to the top two currencies, the dollar and the euro, here's the international monetary system breakdown here. So for international debt, 62.2% is issued in dollars. And here's why I believe they think that the euro is ready to challenge the dollar, because it mentions about global payment currency. So as of now, it's 39.9% and 35.7%, according to the European Central Bank report released in July. As the article comes to an end here, there's something else worth mentioning. It says the main reason is inertia. It says, but another major problem is that the EU isn't seen as a single entity by its global competitors, hence the idea of removing the borders, or the need to remove the borders. It says Juncker understands this. In his speech, he argued that strengthening the euro's international role requires completing EU's economic monetary union. So when you click on the word completing, it takes you to the Completing Europe's Economic and Monetary Union, and it's basically a 24-page report that has been put together and chimed in on by a variety of governors as well as board members there. So you have Jean-Claude Juncker, you have Donald Tusk, you have Mario Draghi, the EU Central Bank president here. So if you thumb through it, you get an idea as to what's going on here. But this is somewhat of a framework that they've come up with to lay out this plan, and they put it in a three-step phase here. It primarily addresses three major issues spread throughout this report here, and it has to do with the economic, the financial, and the fiscal union. And of course, all this jargon is tied together to basically say that they're looking to remove the borders, remove sovereignty from all those nations, and make it just one single governing body, which of course leads to bigger government, more debt, and more trouble for the citizens. So this is what's happening in the news. Thought I would take a minute to share with you some comments given by the EU president this past Wednesday, and how more and more world leaders are beginning to speak out against using the dollar in trade. And so what's most interesting about this is the fact that because Trump isn't playing by the mainstream narrative, he's not playing the globalist agenda. And so since President Trump has come out with the slogan, "Make America Great," there's other leaders out here now that's developing a backbone and coming out with their own slogan. As it said in this article, a European sovereignty. So I believe all this plays into the idea of de-dollarizing or lessening the role of the dollar in these foreign countries, because more countries are realizing that the United States of America has fiscally ran the dollar into the ground, and there's not much they can do. And I'm sure they don't want to be stuck holding worthless piece of papers along with their own national currencies, which will also experience troubles. So I can imagine the next few months before this year comes to an end, there will be more people speaking out against using the dollar in trade. And that's going to take us right into 2019, where everything might become very obvious, and it won't be as easy to hide the truth of the it won't be as easy to hide the truth of the fact that the global economy is not doing well at all, and there's some type of hiccup looming. So other than that, I would love to hear your thoughts on this article. Leave a comment down below. More importantly, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, as well as share it with your family and friends. Look forward to bringing you more news updates. Enjoy your weekend.
There's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to somebody. The question is, how do you set up a system which assures that the real assets are created, which those benefits are employed to purchase?